Doom. The old FPS that many people say put the first-person shooter genre on the map. You probably know it, you've probably played it, and there's almost no way you haven't heard about it since at one point it was supposedly installed on more home computers than the Windows operating system. Which is nuts! Just about anyone who's played the game or had any interest in the Doom series is familiar with Doom's backstory and how it was put together by id Software, a team of young developers including people like John Carmack, Adrian Carmack, Tom Hall, Sandy Peterson, and John Ramero, amongst others. This one project helped propel them into the limelight to the point that these names still hold some weight in the industry today, with John Carmack going on to work with virtual reality and Romero and Hall joining together after leaving id Software to make Ion Storm. While Ion Storm may have started the well-liked Deus Ex series, they never really were able to get off the ground as much as they hoped. Also, there's the whole debacle with Daikatana that didn't really help. Unfortunately, due to mismarketing and some overambition, the game ended up staining Romero's name back when it released and he left the company in 2001. Even though he stayed in the game development space since, Romero seems to have mostly focused on mobile or social media games, steering clear of first-person shooters and staying out of the spotlight. All of that changed in 2016 when he released remakes of Level 4, Command Control, and Level 8, Phobos Anomaly of the first episode of the original Doom. Seeing a developer doing something like this is generally unprecedented since Doom was 21 or so years old at the time, but that wasn't the end of it. A few months later, a Kickstarter campaign was created for a game called Black Room that both Romero and Adrian Carmack had joined forces together to work on. While hype was high for a new FPS by some of the developers from id, the campaign unfortunately didn't last long and was cancelled only a few days later, with a statement saying that the devs wanted to make a demo for the game so people could see just what it was going to be before giving them money for it. With both of these projects, fans were chomping at the bit to see something new and big from John Ramero, and a few years later in 2018, they got their wish with the trailer for a Doom mod that was uploaded to Romero's YouTube channel, a mod called Sigil. Sigil was set up to be some sort of celebration for the 25th anniversary of Doom, even though it missed the mark by a little bit due to delays. It's an entire new episode made by one of the level designers from the original Doom. So let's see how well John Romero's level design chops have held up over time, shall we? Things start off on a pretty high note as you're dropped into a room of enemies right in front of a shotgun with some driving tunes to fuel the fire. Something Sigil went full ham on is definitely its soundtrack, since it actually has two. One uses MIDI files like the original game by James Paddock, and one was created by the virtuoso guitarist Buckethead of all people. Now, I like Buckethead's work well enough, as anyone who knows anything about the guy knows he's rather talented, and I remember playing Jordan many times in Guitar Hero 2 back in the day. His work here not only rocks, but also is able to help create a dark atmosphere for more tense moments. That being said, something just seems wrong about having clean and highly produced music over the visuals of Doom. I mean, it's Doom! While Paddock's soundtrack isn't as crazy as Buckethead's, I find that it fits the game better, not only due to having the bleeps and bloops Doom's music is known for, but for holding its own up against Buckethead's guitaring. Both of these soundtracks were included in a limited physical release that was available for pre-order, but the mod itself is completely free for you to play and for you to listen to these great tracks. One of the main things to keep in mind with Sigil is that it was designed to be the officially unofficial 5th episode of Doom, taking place between Doom 1 and Doom 2. That means it purposefully limited itself to using only things found in the original Doom, with stock textures as well as enemies. There is some kind of storyline about the teleporter at the end of the final level of Doom being glitched, which sends you deeper into the shores of hell, but just like with most story-related things in this game, it's not all that in-depth. Over the years since its release in 1993, there have been a lot of Doom mods put up for download on the internet. Many that incorporate a plethora of custom elements in order to bring a new experience to the game or create something new. Sigil doesn't do that at all, which both helps and hurts it. Visually, the levels feel more distinct than the official episodes since they tend to be filled with more complexity. There's a good amount of out-of-bounds detail to help set up the vibe of Doom Guy being once again thrown into the depths of hell with nothing but his trusty shotgun to keep him company, but it does feel like it comes at a bit of a cost. Levels in Sigil are tight and have a tendency to feel rather linear. Linearity isn't necessarily a bad thing, and it was nice to get through the episode without really getting lost, except for this one room where you have to interact with a broken part of a wall. There's no real indication that you need to do so, but let's not talk about that, okay? Anyway, the lack of movement space hurts some of the base concepts of Doom. Doom's enemy design is primarily focused on keeping players moving. Dodging enemies and strafing around projectiles is the best way to stay alive, but you can't really do that if you don't have the space. Sigil has an overuse of harmful ground areas that, while helping to keep players on track, have done little more than lead to annoying deaths. Pools of damaging lava aren't as bad as insta-kill death pits in my opinion, since Doom usually offers a way out of them if you can find it in time. But there was more than one occasion where I found myself trapped in a small pit with no escape. There's also some inconsistency to level design. For some reason, Sigil has an obsession with interactable objects, teleporters, and teleporters connected to interactable objects. Even though the game already has pressable buttons and switches, Ramero decided to use these green triangle eye things as buttons that have to be damaged to be activated. Some can be just punched or hit with a chainsaw, but most are hidden out of the way and have to be shot. The first level does a pretty good job introducing them organically without needing to outright tell you about them, but after a while they end up feeling like a gimmick. They tend to be hidden back away from the main path and can be difficult to find sometimes, but at least they have something to show you where they are, unlike teleporters. Sometimes these teleporters will be indicated by floating crystals, but not always, as the crystals are also used just for decoration, and every time I came across one I found myself having to check to see if it actually did something to make sure I didn't miss anything. Most teleporters, on the other hand, don't have much indication that they're there at all and can really catch you off guard if you aren't prepared for it. Being limited to Doom's original enemies is a bit of an annoyance since there wasn't a large variety to them, but I feel like Sigil uses them pretty well for the most part. For the most part! Doom 2's addition of demons like the Revenant and the Mancubus really helped fill out the roster, and without them you'll end up seeing the same things over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. The way Doom makes its levels more difficult is either by the number of enemies it throws at you or sending ones with more health your way, and Sigil tends to fall on the latter side of things. The entire episode is obsessed with cacodemons, the freaking fire-shooting, floating eyeball nuisances. They can take a good bit of damage, and this episode has a nasty habit of hiding them in corners waiting to ambush players as they stroll on by. There's also the abundance of big barons with their own nasty habits of being crammed into small rooms right at the end of a level. If you aren't ready for them, they can really eat up your ammo. I played through the game a couple of times on both Hurt Me Plenty and Ultra Violence difficulty, and while I like a good challenge, Ultra Violence just wasn't as fun. With the limitations of monsters for Doom 1, fighting the same ones all the time can get really annoying once the big uns start showing up. Just about every level has at least one Baron in it somewhere, along with a lot of cacos, making groups of enemies feel bullet spongy, and this only gets worse as the difficulty goes up. Ultraviolence also moves around where suits to protect you from damaging floors are, making you have to sometimes walk across them to get one, meaning you're going to take some amount of damage and you just can't do anything about it. All of this is manageable, but the one thing that really got old are Cyberdemons. These brutes are usually used for some kind of boss fight in Doom, but Sigil decided it would be more interesting to throw them at you a lot more often, such as in the middle of level 2. There's also a few sections where you gotta deal with these guys in rather cramped locations, which means that if you don't die to a direct hit from their rockets, you'll probably die from their explosion as they hit a wall. Thankfully, there's usually a teleporter hidden somewhere nearby. You can use the teleport into the dang things to kill them instantly, but that's only if you can find it and if you can get to it before the thing kills you. Usually also doesn't mean always, so sometimes you gotta bite the bullet and try to kill it, or just run the crap out of there as fast as you can. Overall, Sigil is a generally okay set of levels that unfortunately had a lot of hype to live up to. Sometimes the level design made me wonder how much everything was tested before release due to a rather annoying enemy placement with the overuse of small areas packed with monsters. When Sigil's good, it's pretty good, but when Sigil's bad, it can be a grueling and uninteresting slog. What makes Doom fun on its own is more how players can deal with monsters than what or how many they have to deal with, and Sigil's tight spaces just cancel out that idea. The episode also has an obsession with darkness that only sort of works in its favor. Doom was never really a scary game, even though it has horror influences and all the lava and demons and flesh-covered walls and stuff. The way Sigil uses darkness feels like it's trying to heighten the horror, but generally it just makes things annoying since it can be difficult to see most enemies. There is a way to brighten things up by messing around with render settings, and while this makes it easier to see what you're doing, I can't help but feel like it's going against what Sigil is trying to do visually and atmospherically, or at least as atmospheric as you can get with Doom. Visuals and atmosphere is really what Sigil does well, and I feel like messing around with it hurts the mod overall more than it helps, though a flashlight wouldn't go amiss. While Sigil is far from bad, I find it difficult to say that it's more than just good or decent. I can get a lot of what Ramero was going for here, but it's really up to what someone is personally looking for in a pack of Doom levels for how much they'll really enjoy it. The biggest question is, does Sigil do what it set out to do? Does it feel, look, and play like a fifth lost episode of Doom? To me, it does, but only sometimes. Not every Doom or Doom 2 level was all that great, and there are moments in the mod's level design that don't seem too dissimilar from some of the sections from Doom, especially later levels by Ramero in Doom 2. Unfortunately, there's a lot that either fights against how base levels for the game were laid out and how players navigate them or deal with groups of enemies. The things that stand out in Sigil and that I've talked about before are what stops it from really feeling like it fits into Doom all that well. Lots of small areas crammed with monsters, tons of damaging floors, some without a way to escape, darkness everywhere even when it's unneeded, a plethora of pathways that are little more than ledges, and just so many teleporters. If you're someone interested in Doom mods, there's no reason not to try it out and come to your own conclusions, as the episode has so far been divisive amongst fans. I just suggest staying away from the higher difficulties for your first time through, unless you really want to go through hell. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think about the mod or this video in the comment section. I'm MegapieMan, and I'll talk to you guys later. Want to see more of my stuff? Click on the video on the left for a quick peek at Rico, a roguelike first-person shooter, or click on the video on the right for a review of Metro 2033 and 2033 Redux.